Have you ever found yourself wondering what really makes an action, well, wrong? It's something we all grapple with, right? Is it the bad intention that counts, or is it the action itself? Or maybe it's just the messy result at the end. It's a question that has been debated forever.
Yeah, this is a dilemma we all face. But what if I told you that an ancient text, one that's about 1600 years old, called the Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, gives us this incredibly precise psychological framework to break it all down? Seriously. And it's less about pointing fingers and more about getting a really clear-eyed look at how our own minds work. Okay, let's dive into this.
So, before we can even begin to analyze an action, we have to trace it back to its source. And according to this text, every single significant thing we do, good or bad, it all starts in the mind. It all begins with something called a defilement. You can think of these defilements, greed, hatred, ignorance, as these powerful undercurrents flowing through our minds. They're basically the raw fuel that can power a fully formed action. But here's the thing, and this is absolutely crucial. Not all of these mental states are created equal. The text makes this really sharp distinction. It separates those fleeting, spontaneous thoughts that just pop into your head. It calls them passive defilements, from the ones we actually grab onto and engage with, the active defilements. And it's these active, deliberately fueled thoughts that have the real juice, the real power to kickstart a major chain of events. All right, so if these defilements are the fuel, what kind of machine do they power? Well, the text lays out this remarkably organized blueprint, known as the 10 unwholesome karmic paths. Think of it like a field guide to the different ways our negative thoughts can actually show up in the world. And right away, you can see just how thorough this model is. I mean, it's not just about what we do with our bodies. The whole framework is neatly divided into actions of the body, actions of speech, and this is the most subtle part, actions that happen entirely inside our own heads. Every single one of these is considered its own distinct path. So we've got the fuel and we've got the map. But this is where the framework gets really, really interesting. Because, knowing the types of bad actions is one thing, but what actually makes one of them karmically complete and super potent? The answer to that question turns this from just a list into a seriously powerful tool for self-analysis. You see, an action isn't just one single event. According to this model, for a negative act to be considered complete, to be fully baked, so to speak, a very specific recipe of 5 ingredients has to be there all at the same time. If you're missing even one, the entire nature of the act can change. Let's break this anatomy down. First, you need an object. That's the target of your action. Second, your cognition. You have to actually see the object for what it is. Third, there's the intention. That's the real desire to follow through. Fourth, the defilement, the emotional fuel like greed or anger driving the whole thing. And finally, completion. You actually have to pull it off successfully. This totally transforms a simple judgment into a detailed psychological process. Okay, I know this might all seem a little abstract, so let's make it real. Let's apply this 5-part framework to a couple of concrete examples from those 10 paths and see exactly how this thing works in practice. Let's kick things off with a super common action of speech, lying. We all know what lying is, but what actually makes it a complete karmic act, according to this system? Just look at how incredibly precise this is. The object is the plain and simple truth. Your cognition is your deliberate choice to twist it. The intention is that specific desire for someone to believe your false version. The defilement is whatever is driving you, greed, malice, you name it. And get this, the completion only happens if the other person actually understands what you said. If they're confused or don't get it, the karmic act isn't considered complete. Isn't that wild? Now let's try a mental act, which is way more subtle. Covetousness, or that really intense kind of greed. I mean, how can a thought be a complete action? Well, the text analyzes this by breaking it down into 5 progressive mental states. This is just fascinating. A complete act of covetousness isn't just a fleeting thought like, ooh, I want that. No, it's a clear progression. It starts with clinging to what you already have, which then escalates into wanting more. That desire then morphs into intensely craving what other people have, which then hardens into actually scheming and planning to get it. And the final stage? Being so consumed by that greed that you lose all sense of shame. Only when all 5 of these states are present is it considered the full-blown mental act. So we've basically dissected the anatomy of an action. But why on earth does any of this matter to us today? Well, The real power of this framework isn't about looking back and judging our past actions. It's about understanding what's happening in our minds in the present moment. This line from the source text, this is the whole key. When all components are present, it really hammers home the point that a powerful, consequential action is a process. It's a recipe. And if you know the recipe, you can start to notice when it's being cooked up in your own mind. And that's the big takeaway. This is not about creating a scorecard for your life to see how you're doing. It's about developing a kind of radical self-awareness. By understanding these 5 conditions, we can learn to spot them as they're happening. We can catch that active defilement before it spirals into a complete action. It gives us that crucial space to pause, to see the chain of events unfolding, and maybe, just maybe, choose a different path. And that really brings us to the final thought here. By deconstructing our actions into these clear psychological pieces, the object, the cognition, the intention, the defilement, and the completion, we're not being handed a gavel to judge ourselves. We're being handed a mirror. So the real question is, can this ancient blueprint for the anatomy of an action become a truly practical modern tool for our own self-reflection and growth?